Imagine for a second that you are a factory manager in Duisburg. It's 3 a.m. Your phone is ringing. It's the night shift supervisor. He sounds panicked. Boss, we have to shut down the furnaces. What? Is there a fire? No. Worse. The electricity price just spiked to €900 per megawatt hour. We literally cannot afford to keep the steel hot. You hang up. You do the math in your head. At that price, every hour the plant runs costs more than the steel you're making is worth. You're burning money. Literally. This isn't Venezuela. This isn't a war zone. This is Germany. 2022. The fourth largest economy on the planet. Welcome to the energy went. The energy turnaround. It was supposed to be humanity's glorious leap into a future of wind, solar, and carbon-free electricity. Germany, with German efficiency, with German engineering, was going to show the world how it's done. They spent $500 billion. $500 billion. And what did they get? The highest electricity prices in the developed world. An industrial exodus. Factories closing. Companies fleeing to Texas and China. And here's the part that'll make your head explode. They're now tearing down wind farms to expand coal mines. Yeah, you heard that right. This is the story of how one of the most technologically advanced nations on Earth took a perfectly functioning energy system and systematically destroyed it. How panic, ideology, and catastrophic miscalculation turned an economic superpower into a cautionary tale. Today we're going to dissect the most expensive self-inflicted wound in modern economic history. Buckle up. It's going to be a bumpy, expensive ride. To understand how we got here, we need to go back to 2010. Obama was president. The iPad just came out. Germany was on top of the world. Angela Merkel, a physicist with a PhD in quantum chemistry, was running the show. And she just did something smart. She extended the operating licenses for Germany's nuclear power plants. Germany had 17 nuclear reactors. They provided 25% of the country's electricity. Clean. Reliable. The plan was simple. Use nuclear as the stable backbone while gradually building out wind and solar over the next few decades. It was sensible. It was German. Then March 11, 2011 happened. The Tohoku earthquake. The tsunami. Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant starts melting down. The images were horrifying. Reactors exploding. Radiation leaking. Evacuations. For weeks, the world watched Japan fight to contain the disaster. Germany is 9,000 kilometers away from Japan. Germany doesn't have tsunamis. Germany's nuclear plants are completely different designs. The Fukushima plant was 40 years old with known vulnerabilities. German plants? State of the art. None of that mattered. The German public lost their minds. The anti-nuclear Green Party, Die Grünen, had been waiting for this moment for 30 years. Since Chernobyl. Since the Cold War. This was their vindication. Protests erupted. 250,000 people formed a human chain. The media went into hysteria mode. Anne Merkel, the physicist, looked at the polls and panicked. Or maybe she didn't panic. Maybe she just made a cold political calculation. Her coalition was shaky. The Green Party was surging. So 11 weeks after Fukushima, she announced the atomosting. The nuclear exit. All 17 nuclear plants would shut down by 2022. 8 of them? Shut down immediately. Just off. This is the original sin. Let me give you the household equivalent. You have a perfectly good furnace. Works great. Then you see on TV that a house in Japan had a furnace explosion after an earthquake and tsunami destroyed the town. So you, living in a place with no earthquakes or tsunamis, decide to sledgehammer your furnace. In winter. Because safety. Germany took 17 paid-off, zero-carbon, 24/7 reliable power plants and threw them in the garbage. Why is this a $500 billion disaster? Because here's what they had to do next. Build enough wind and solar to replace that 25% of electricity generation, plus build the grid infrastructure to handle intermittent power, plus build backup gas plants for when the wind doesn't blow, plus pay for all of this through electricity surcharges that tripled German power prices. Between 2010 and 2020, German households paid over €200 billion in EEG surcharges. That's the Renewable Energy Act fee tacked onto every electricity bill. It funded the solar panels, the wind farms, the subsidies. And here's the punchline nobody's laughing at. Despite spending hundreds of billions on renewables, Germany's carbon emissions barely budged for a decade. What? Because when the wind didn't blow and the sun didn't shine, which happens a lot in Northern Europe, they couldn't turn the nuclear plants back on. They were gone. So what did they do? They burned lignite coal. The dirtiest, filthiest fossil fuel on the planet. They killed the cleanest baseload power source to save the environment and ended up burning the sootiest rock in the ground. You can't make this up. Okay, so you've killed nuclear. You've got wind and solar, but they're intermittent. You need backup. You need something that can fire up fast on those dark, windless nights. The Germans have a word for this: Dunkelflaut. Dark doldrums. If you want to eventually phase out coal, what's the bridge fuel? Natural gas. It burns cleaner than coal. The turbines spin up quickly. And it's perfect for industrial processes, making chemicals, steel, glass. All the stuff Germany exports. There's just one problem. Germany doesn't have natural gas. Not much anyway. Enter the dealer, Vladimir Putin. For decades, Germany operated under a policy called Wandel durch Handel. Change through trade. The idea was beautifully naive. If we buy enough Russian gas, if we entangle our economies, Russia will become a liberal democracy. They won't attack their best customer. This led to Nord Stream 1. Then Nord Stream 2. Massive pipelines under the Baltic Sea, pumping cheap Siberian gas straight into German industry. It was a drug. And Germany was the junkie. By 2021, Russia supplied 55% of Germany's natural gas imports. BASF, Bayer, Volkswagen, the entire German manufacturing model was built on cheap Russian gas flowing forever. There were warnings. So many warnings. Poland warned them. Ukraine screamed at them. The Baltic states were practically hysterical. You're giving Putin a kill switch to your economy. And then there was the moment. The viral moment. United Nations General Assembly. Donald Trump is speaking. He says, Germany will become totally dependent on Russian energy if it does not immediately change course. The camera cuts to the German delegation. They're smirking. Some are laughing. You can see them looking at each other like, listen to this clown. He doesn't understand sophisticated European diplomacy. That clip aged like milk in the sun. February 24, 2022. Russia invades Ukraine. The laughter stopped real quick. Suddenly, Wandel durch Handel looked less like enlightened policy and more like civilizational suicide. When the sanctions hit, when Russia throttled the gas flows, when the Nord Stream pipelines mysteriously exploded in what was definitely not sabotage, wink wink, Germany was caught naked in a blizzard. Gas prices didn't just rise. They went vertical. Spot prices hit €300 per megawatt hour. That's a 1,000% increase from normal. Remember our factory manager from the opening? His energy bill went from €1 million a month to €10 million. You can't absorb that. You can't pass that on. The German government had to scramble. They bailed out Uniper, a major utility, for €30 billion. They spent hundreds of billions more subsidizing household energy bills to prevent riots in the streets. And here's the beautiful irony. Robert Habeck, the Green Party's economy minister, the guy who spent his career campaigning against fossil fuels, had to go on a humiliating global tour begging for LNG, liquefied natural gas, from Qatar, from the Emirates, from the United States. And LNG is way more expensive than pipeline gas. It has to be supercooled, shipped across oceans, then regasified. The era of cheap German manufacturing? Gone. The competitive advantage that made in Germany a global standard was secretly subsidized by cheap Russian hydrocarbons. Now that the subsidy is gone, the cracks in the foundation are turning into canyons. We're just getting started. In the next section, we're going to look at the industrial exodus. Why companies that survived 2 world wars are now packing up and moving to China and Texas. If you want to understand the global economy without the corporate jargon and government propaganda, smash that subscribe button. It helps the algorithm. It helps me keep making these videos. And honestly, it helps me afford my own electricity bill, which thank God is not a German electricity bill. Drop a comment. Should Germany restart its nuclear plants or is it too late? I read every single one. If you want to see the real cost of this energy trap, don't look at a utility bill. Look at Ludwigshafen. This is BASF headquarters. The largest chemical complex in the world. This single site uses as much natural gas as the entire country of Switzerland. For over 150 years, this has been the beating heart of German industry. They make the fertilizers that feed the world. The plastics in your car. The pharmaceuticals in your medicine cabinet. In 2023, the heart started failing. BASF announced permanent downsizing in Europe. 2,600 jobs cut at the flagship plant. One of their ammonia production units? Shut down. Permanently. And where's the investment going? Zhangjiang, China. A brand new $10 billion state-of-the-art chemical complex. Why China? Because energy there is cheap. And the government isn't trying to guilt-trip you for using it. BASF isn't alone. It's a mass exodus. Miele, those washing machines that last 30 years, moving production to Poland. Volkswagen is openly discussing building battery factories in Canada and the US, chasing subsidies from the Inflation Reduction Act. ThyssenKrupp, the steel giant, is hemorrhaging cash. They can't compete when German steel costs 40% more than American or Chinese steel purely because of energy. Covestro, the chemicals company, moving operations to the United States. And here's the one that really stings. Hakel, a toilet paper manufacturer, went bankrupt. Toilet paper. They couldn't afford to run the machines that make toilet paper because electricity was too expensive. Economists call this structural adjustment. I call it what it is, deindustrialization. Germany is an export economy. They don't have Apple. They don't have Amazon. They make things. Physical things. Cars. Machines. Chemicals. If you destroy the ability to make things competitively, what's left? A really nice museum with excellent beer. Martin Brudermüller, BASF CEO, didn't sugarcoat it. He told investors, Europe is increasingly uncompetitive as a business location. That CEO speak for, we're getting out while we still can. This isn't just about corporate profits. This is about the high-paying, middle-class union jobs that hold a society together. When steel mills close, they don't reopen. When chemical plants move to China, they stay in China. The expertise leaves. The supply chains relocate. It's permanent. Germany is hollowing itself out to meet carbon targets that the rest of the world is ignoring. It's like setting your house on fire to prove to the neighbors how serious you are about fire safety. Okay, let's get technical for a minute, because this is where the incompetence truly shines. Germany has a geography problem. The wind blows up north, near the ocean, where nobody lives. The factories and cities are down south. Bavaria, Baden-Württemberg, BMW, Siemens, all the big players. To move power from north to south, you need massive high-voltage transmission lines. The biggest one is called Südlink. It was supposed to be the main artery of the energy wend. Original plan, ready by 2022, just in time for the nuclear phase-out. Reality, delayed to 2028. Maybe. What? NIMBY lawsuits. Not in my backyard protests. Environmental groups worried about birds. Local communities worried about property values. So they compromised. Bury the cables underground. Great. Now it costs 3 times as much and takes twice as long to build. So what happens today when a storm hits the North Sea and the wind turbines go crazy? You get too much power in the north, and no way to send it south. The grid gets overloaded. To prevent a blackout, grid operators tell the wind farms to shut down. But here's the kicker, the wind farms still get paid. It's called redispatch. I call it ghost electricity. German consumers are paying wind farms billions of euros to not produce power. In 2022 alone, the cost hit 4.2 billion euros. Think about that. You're paying for electricity that doesn't exist. Meanwhile, because that power can't reach the south, the factories in Bavaria have to fire up, you guessed it, coal and gas plants. You're paying twice. Once for the green energy you didn't get. Once for the dirty energy you had to use instead. It's a Rube Goldberg machine of inefficiency. And who pays for all this? The German grandmother in Hamburg opening her mailbox and finding an electricity bill that's doubled in 3 years. We're halfway through this disaster. In the next part, we're going to talk about the heat pump rebellion that nearly collapsed the government. And we'll look at why Germany's emissions are actually dropping. Spoiler, it's not because of renewable energy. If you're enjoying this breakdown of economic chaos, hit that like button. It tells YouTube people actually care about energy policy and aren't just here for cat videos. Drop a comment. Would you install a €30,000 heat pump if the government forced you to? By 2023, the German government had a problem. They shut down nuclear. They're burning coal. Their carbon footprint isn't improving. They needed a win. They needed to show progress. Enter the Heizungsgesetz. The heating law. Robert Habeck, the Green Party economy minister, pushed through legislation that effectively banned new oil and gas boilers starting in 2024. The replacement? Heat pumps. Now don't get me wrong. Heat pumps are incredible technology. They're basically air conditioners running backwards. Super efficient when they work. But here's the catch. They work best in modern, well-insulated houses with underfloor heating. You know what most German houses are? Built in the 1950s and 60s. Brick walls thick enough to stop a tank. Beautiful craftsmanship. Terrible insulation. To make a heat pump work in a typical German house, you need to rip up floors, replace radiators, insulate walls, maybe replace windows. The cost? 20,000 euros to 50,000 euros. Easily. The government offered subsidies, but the messaging was catastrophic. It felt like forced expropriation. Picture this: you're Gisela. You're 68. You live on a pension. Your house is paid off. It's your only asset. Your gas furnace dies. Under the new law, you can't replace it with another gas furnace. You have to install a heat pump. 35,000 euros. Your pension is 1,400 euros a month. The math doesn't work. The public reaction wasn't just anger. It was fury. The tabloid Bild ran screaming headlines: Heizhammer. The heating hammer. Habeck's approval ratings collapsed. The far-right AfD party surged in the polls by simply saying, "We won't touch your boiler." The government nearly fell apart. They had to water down the law, create exemptions, delay deadlines. But the damage was done. And here's the perverse outcome. People panicked and rushed to install new gas boilers before the ban kicked in. They locked in fossil fuel heating for another 20 to 30 years. Instead of accelerating the transition, they poisoned public opinion and created a backlash. It was a masterclass in how not to do policy. Now the German government will look you in the eye and say, "But our emissions are dropping. We hit our 2023 climate targets." And technically they're right. Germany's CO2 emissions in 2023 fell to the lowest level in 70 years. Wind and solar are producing record amounts of electricity. Success. But wait. Why did emissions drop? Was it the wind turbines? The solar panels? The heat pumps? No. It's because the factories stopped running. Energy-intensive industrial production fell 20%. When you shut down steel mills, chemical plants, and cement factories, your emissions go down. Congratulations. You saved the planet by destroying your economy. This is the equivalent of losing weight by cutting off your leg. Yes, the scale says you're lighter. But you're also bleeding out on the bathroom floor. The head of Germany's Federal Audit Office explicitly called this out. He said Germany isn't achieving a sustainable transition. It's achieving economic contraction that masquerades as climate success. And it gets worse. Germany shut down nuclear. France kept theirs running. France generates 70% of its electricity from nuclear. Their carbon intensity? About 50 grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour. Germany, even on a good day with lots of wind and sun, is at 300 to 400 grams per kilowatt hour. So when a German buys an electric car to save the planet, they're charging it with electricity that's 6 to 8 times dirtier than what a French person uses. The green energy leader of Europe is actually one of the continent's biggest polluters per kilowatt hour, simply because they refuse to accept that nuclear is zero carbon. So here we are. Late 2025. The German economy is stagnating. It was the only G7 economy to shrink in 2023. Growth in 2024 was basically zero. The German model, cheap energy and high-quality exports out, is broken. The political landscape is fractured. The Green Party is fighting for survival. The coalition government is deeply unpopular. The AfD is polling at 20% nationally, their highest ever, by exploiting anger over energy costs and industrial decline. The industries that made Germany rich? They're looking for exits. And the world is watching. India, Vietnam, Indonesia, developing nations are looking at Germany and saying, "Yeah, we're not doing that." They're building coal plants. They're building nuclear. They're prioritizing reliability and affordability over ideology. Poland looked at Germany and decided to build 6 nuclear reactors in partnership with the US and South Korea. Even the Netherlands, which was following Germany's renewables-heavy path, is reconsidering nuclear. Germany wanted to be a role model. And they succeeded. They became the perfect example of what not to do. They proved you can't run a modern industrial economy on intermittent, weather-dependent energy alone. Not without massive, reliable baseload backup. And if you destroy your clean backup, nuclear, before your replacement is ready, you fall off the bridge. Is there a way out? Maybe. Germany still has world-class engineers. They have capital. There's talk of potentially restarting some nuclear plants, though the technical and political hurdles are enormous. There's hope that hydrogen and battery storage will eventually save the day. But that's years away. Maybe decades. The lesson for the rest of us is crystal clear. Energy policy cannot be built on wishful thinking. It cannot be driven by panic or ideology. It requires physics, math, and cold economic reality. Reliable energy is the foundation of civilization. It's what separates the developed world from the developing world. When you make energy expensive and unreliable, everything else collapses. The hospitals, the schools, the factories, the living standards, All of it rests on affordable, abundant power. If you let ideology drive the bus, don't be surprised when you drive it off a cliff. Germany spent $500 billion learning this lesson. They dismantled one of the most successful industrial economies in human history in the name of saving the planet. And the tragic irony? Their carbon emissions per capita are still higher than France, which just kept its nuclear plants running. Hopefully the rest of us can learn it for free. Thanks for watching. If you found this deep dive valuable, check out the next video where I break down France's energy strategy and why they're quietly winning the energy transition while everyone argues about it. It's the perfect sequel to this disaster story. I'll see you in the next one.